Understand the summary of chapterization, it doesn't take much time in getting complete command over the various events or various components of respective chapters. So we have totally 20 chapters we have. Out of 20 chapters, we have the 7 chapters from ancient Indian history, 7 chapters, 5 chapters from medieval, and the remaining chapters from modern. First, understanding syllabus is an extremely important one. And no doubt when you go through syllabus, you come across a little bit clumsy, please. It is our duty to make in order, organize way of it, to avoid confusion. The moment you come across confusion or little bit clumsy, our mind never accepts this. మనకి ఇంట్రెస్ట్ వచ్చేది ఆ మాసకి పుణ్యానికి. కొంచెం అక్కడి మొత్తం ఆగమ మెల్లగా మెసేజ్ వస్తుంది నారాయణ. So to avoid all this stuff, have clarity over ancient, medieval and modern. And you shall in a position to understand how the chapters have got their own link, please. First chapter, second, third, fourth, fifth, it went on. So very first chapter, that is Prehistoric Cultures. Very first chapter, Prehistoric Cultures. When we understand the span of prehistoric cultures, just to have an idea, from earliest 2500 BC. When I say from earliest, right from the evolution of humankind, we'll be going to discuss Paleolithic cultures and all, right? So very first chapter, prehistoric cultures from earliest to 2500 BC. So in this chapter, we are going to learn what does it mean by culture, what are the components in culture, what does it mean by material culture, non-material culture, and how these cultures further classified into various aspects, that is Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic and finally Chalcolithic. So what does it mean by Paleolithic? Paleolithic cultures we call it. Old Stone Age, Paleo which means old. Lithic which means stone. Old Stone Age cultures. So how these cultures were classified, what were the features of the respective cultures, the important sides of respective cultures and all that. After the same towards Mesolithic followed by Neolithic. Out of 4 cultures, that is like Paleo, Meso, Neo and Chalco, the most important happen to be Neolithic cultures. Why? Archaeologists gave enormous importance to Neolithic cultures. What kind of radical developments or radical changes which took place in Neolithic cultures, that will be discussed. So prehistoric cultures. In the previous session we have learnt, based on script, history broadly divided into 3 categories, that is prehistory, proto-history or history, prehistoric age, proto-historic age, historic age. Prehistoric age, no script at all. So the moment you say no script at all, then how we are going to learn? Obviously, under these circumstances, we need to depend a branch, one of the branches which studies the past, archaeology. We have learned in the previous session, there are 2 branches which studies the past. History studies the past through literature. Archaeology also studies the past through material excavations. Obviously through excavations, discoveries, excavations, some X, Y, Z sites, Meharghar, different prominent sites, right? So all this stuff that will be discussed under the tag called prehistoric cultures. Followed by second chapter, that is Indus Valley Civilization. Indus Valley Civilization. IVC stands for Indus Valley Civilization. Indus Valley Civilization. Now in this chapter we are going to learn what is the difference between culture and civilization In which circumstances Indus Valley civilization, like the towns and cities of Indus Valley civilization were discovered, under whose guidance these towns and cities were discovered, the important sites of Indus Valley civilization and their characteristic features. When I say their characteristic features, that is like town planning, division of towns, structure of the towns, what kind of elements, engineering technology these people used. Followed by society, we are going to learn how we need to understand social institutions, what is the criteria based on which Indus people classified their society, and how Indus people treated their women, what kind of system, whether patriarchal or matriarchal. So these are the stuff that will be discussed in the tag called society, followed by economy. What kind of economy, whether pastoral economy or agrarian economy. If agrarian economy, what kind of methods, cultivation of crops used, what kind of crops cultivated, Kharif crops, Rabi crops, the differences between Kharif and Rabi crops. Right? And during excavations, did we come across any kind of materials which are related to agriculture? Right? Followed by what type of industries which we found, followed by trade and commerce. So once we are done with society, economy, we'll be going to talk about religious aspects. Obviously, be it prehistoric cultures and Indus Valley civilization, we totally depended on archaeology. We have learned the second component of classification of history, that is based on script. If script is available but not deciphered, not understood, this phenomenon, what do we call? Proto-historic age. The best example, Indus Valley civilization. No doubt Indus people developed the script, but we are not in a position to decipher it. So the moment you say no script, the moment you say though there was a script, we are not in a position to understand it, obviously we need to look at archaeology. So once again, archaeology helped a lot in understanding various aspects of Indus Valley civilization. And we are going to learn in what way Indus Valley civilization got disappeared by 1750 BC. We are going to emphasize towns and cities of Indus Valley civilization might have disappeared, but not culture. Even today, the cultural aspects, whatever the cultural elements which the people of Indus Valley followed between 2500 BC to 1750 BC, even today these elements that are being continued. But no doubt, towns and cities have got disappeared by 1750 BC. It's all about Indus Valley civilization. The third chapter, that is Vedic civilization. Third chapter, Vedic civilization. The span of Vedic civilization, 1500 BC to 600 BC. 1500 BC to 600 BC, the span of Vedic civilization. So first two chapters, we were forced to depend on archaeology. From third chapter onwards, history. Because Aryans developed script, because Aryans developed language, whatnot, it went on. And Aryans were responsible for producing the massive revolutionary literature, what we prefer to call Vedic literature. For our convenience, Vedic literature broadly divided into two categories, that is Shruti literature and Smriti literature. What are the components in Shruti literature? What are the components in Smriti literature? How Shruti literature differs with Smriti, that will be discussed. And for our convenience, we are going to divide the entire Vedic civilization, the span of Vedic civilization, 1500 BC to 600 BC, into two phases, that is early Vedic period and later Vedic period. The span of early Vedic period, 1500 BC to 1000 BC, whereas later Vedic period, 1000 BC to 600 BC. For our convenience, for examination point of view, we are going to have analytical studies. We are going to learn society of early Vedic period. With the same background, we are going to understand what kind of changes which took place in the social institutions of later Vedic period. Society of early Vedic period followed by society of later Vedic period. Obviously, we found lot of changes. In early Vedic society, we found class-based society. When it comes to later Vedic period, caste-based society. We'll be going to discuss. We're going to spend a lot of time the differences between class-based and caste-based. Followed by economy. Economy of early Vedic period, economy of later Vedic period. Early Vedic economy was a pastoral economy. When it comes to later Vedic economy, agrarian economy. We'll be going to understand what factors forced later Vedic Aryans, otherwise called as Gangetic Aryans, to abandon what we call pastoral economy and to adopt agrarian economy. Followed by religion. Religion of EVP, religion of LVP. Followed by polity of LVP, polity of EVP. So when we understand Vedic civilization with a background of EVP followed by LVP, background of EVP followed by LVP, let me tell you, you'll never forget this stuff. So our target is examples. Our target is acquiring knowledge. Whatever, మీరు ఎన్ని విన్యాసాలు చేసినా అవన్నీ కూడా మన ఎగ్జామ్ కోసమే. సో స్టార్ట్ లైక్ డిమార్కేటింగ్ కాంపోనెంట్స్. మీకు నచ్చిన విధంగా start like reading the components with your own style. You need not to follow some X book, you need not to follow like some Y classification. You classify on your own ways. And question, if this particular component comes for prelims, how I'm going to answer? The same component for mains, how I'm going to organize my answer? The same component for interview, how I'm going to articulate it. I prefer to call these three elements comprehensive preparation. First prelims అయిపోయింది సార్, తర్వాత చూస్తాము, మళ్ళీ కోచింగ్ వస్తాము, ఆల్ లేదు సూల్ లేదు, ఎందుకు సార్ కొడుకు పేరు సోమలింగం, ఇవన్నీ పక్కన పెట్టాలి. You must have comprehensive preparation. Prelims, mains and interview. Whatever subject, whether talk about history, polity, economy, geography, including current affairs. When it's a current affairs, reading newspaper, when you come across some concept for prelims point of view, how mains point of view. If the question be asked, how I'm going to articulate, you need not to prepare a lecture, please. Just 1 or 2 words, right? That's it. లేదా నేర్చుకోండి. Just go and vomit in front of your friends. Vomit అంటే చెప్పండి, దండం పెడతాను, నీకు స్విగ్గీ తెచ్చేస్తాను, లేకుంటే సల్లా పోస్తాను, కూర్చోండి, నేను చెప్తాను. డైలీ సల్లా పోసుకుంటా కూర్చోకండి, ఎప్పుడో. సో జస్ట్ లైక్ when I say you're explaining to some X, Y, Z or friends, it's not because you're making him or her enlightenment, it's your selfish place. By explaining him, by explaining her, you learn the subject that we used to follow in central universities. Obviously, we used to follow in even competitive exams. You shall come out from that the so-called insular attitude. If I explain this to her, తనకు జాబ్ వస్తే నేను ఇక్కడనే బతుకమ్మ ఆడుకుంటా కూర్చోవాలన్నా, అది సినిమాలో కానీ చెప్తానమాట, ఎంత తాగితే అంత ఎక్కుతుంది అనమాట. సో ఎంత వేరే వాళ్ళకి చెప్తే అంత మనకు గుర్తుంటుంది. For our selfish reason based. The main motto of explaining, like for our selfish reason. Right, keeping aside this stuff, Vedic civilization. And fourth one, that is pre-Mauryan age. Pre-Mauryan age. The span of pre-Mauryan age, 600 BC to 400 BC, please. 600 BC to 400 BC. So under the tag called pre-Mauryan age, we are going to learn political events, especially Magadhan Empire. So there is a concept called Mahajanapadas. In Sanskrit we call Shodasha Mahajanapadas. Sho, 6, Dasha, 10, 6 plus 10, 16. Shodasha Mahajanapadas, 16 larger kingdoms. So out of 16 larger kingdoms, one kingdom named Magadhan or Magadha emerged as an empire. Obviously, we will be going to discuss the difference between kingdom and empire. Rajyamu, Samrajyamu. So out of 16 kingdoms, one kingdom called Magadha emerged as an empire. What are the advantages of Magadha? One of the patent questions of mains general studies exams. Between you call UPSC mains and say Group 1 mains. Factors for the rise of Magadhan Empire. Very traditional discussion. And obviously with modern touch kind of. So when you understand factors for the rise of Magadhan Empire, it becomes easy to understand a component called factors for the rise of Marathas in 16th, 17th century that will be discussed. So what is this Magadhan Empire and what kind of dynasties ruled over Magadhan Empire? Very briefly please. As I was telling, our target is not political history but to have an idea over political history. In order to understand socio-economic and cultural history, we shall have the background of political history. Very briefly, what is what kind of? Haryanka dynasty, important events, followed by Shishunaga dynasty, important events, Nanda dynasty, Mauryan dynasty, Shunga dynasty, Kanva dynasty. So pre-Mauryan age. Besides the age of Mahajanapadas, we are going to talk about Persian invasions, foreign invasions. So who were Persians, who were Darius the first, Darius the second, in which circumstances these people concentrated on India. And Persian invasions followed by Greek invasions, Alexander the Great. We'll be going to talk about Battle of Hydaspes, or Jhelum Nadi Yuddamu we call it in Telugu. And what kind of impact Indian subcontinent experienced from Persian invasions followed by Greek invasions. So these are the components we are going to discuss, political conditions of pre-Mauryan age, and once we are done with political conditions, I'll be going to talk about religious conditions. Same, one of the important components and happen to be previous question of general studies, mains, UPSC at the same time the so-called Group 1 services, factors for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism. Let me tell you, it's a patent question. Please. Factors for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism. So what were the favorable conditions which forced these religions to emerge and getting command over the so-called 6th century BC to 200 BC, especially Buddhism. 600 BC to 200 BC. How many years? 400 years, let me tell you. There was only one religion called Buddhism. Then how about Vedic religion? They got shut down their business place. We will be going to discuss the so-called defects of Vedic religion. We are also going to discuss what were the defects of Jainism. It was in 6th century BC or 600 BC for about 64 religions born and brought up in Indian subcontinent. Out of 64 philosophies, not religion, I'm sorry, out of 64 philosophies, only half a dozen philosophies assumed the color and character called religion. One among them was Buddhism. One among them was Jainism, Ajivika, Charvaka, we have religions. Of all religions, the most popular happened to be Buddhism. Obviously, we shall understand what are the advantages of Buddhism. Why people rushed towards Buddhism. Buddhism enjoyed the official status for about 400 years, from 600 BC to 200 BC. Obviously, Buddhism was patronized by some XYZ dynasties and rulers, especially Mauryan dynasty. Mauryan Ashoka. Because of Mauryan Ashoka's efforts, Buddhism earned the title, the name, the fame called international religion. And we'll be going to discuss what were the sects in Buddhism, what were the sects in Jainism, on what basis these sects have emerged, and how these sects were responsible for decline of the respective religions. So political conditions followed by religious conditions under the tag called pre Mauryan age. Followed by Mauryan age. Fifth chapter you call it Mauryan age. It's a good question. Good question. So 2500 BC to 1750 BC, and according to your the so-called strategy 1750 BC to 1500 BC, what happened? It's quite interesting to know. Neither we have archaeological sources, and forget about literary sources. As I was telling, we were forced to depend on archaeological sources. When it comes to archaeological sources, we got to know from 1500 onwards. Then you said historical sources, even history also helps us in understanding Vedas and all. According to one gentleman by name Max Muller, we'll be going to discuss, the gentleman from Germany, German Indologist, he opines that Rigveda was composed between 1500 BC to 1000 BC. Between 1500 BC to 1000 BC, it was an opinion of Max Muller, German Indologist. Indology. Can anyone? Study of Indian culture, fantastic. Study of Indian culture. Then can we call ourselves as Indologist? I repeat the question, a little bit common sense based question. Can we call ourselves as Indologist? History, historian. Archaeology, archaeologist. Mathematics, mathematician. Indology, Indologist. The study which deals with Indian culture, Indian civilization, other stuff which are related to India, Indology. My question is very simple question. Can we call ourselves as Indologists? How many says yes? Please raise your hand. Right. How many says no? How many says no? Why? Sir, okay. Achha, directly we are not studying. Through history books we are studying. Good. I'm just kidding, please. Including online students. Someone says, yes, we can call ourselves Indologists. Please. Why we can call ourselves as Indologists? See, response is important. Forget about answer, please. అంటే నువ్వు రెస్పాన్స్ ఇచ్చిన తర్వాత మళ్ళీ పత్యాపరం చేస్తావు కదా సార్, చేయండి. Why do we call ourselves as an Indologist? As a few says, no, we are not Indologists. Okay. Acha, Indologists are specialists. నోటిదుల అది అలవాటు అయిపోయింది అన్నమాట. అవును. ఓకే, ఫైన్. ఎనీ అదర్? Okay, fine, good. Any other?
We are Indologists, then we should be historians, economists.
Okay. Chalo, any other? Pass. Chalo, good. So repeat. Response is important. So Asha Patil says there requires methodology to study or contribute to writing or study. Fine, good. So repeat. Response is important. Assume as if you are preparing for interview, please. మళ్ళీ మేము ఇంటర్వ్యూ తీసుకుంటాం లేదు సార్, కానీ జనరల్గా చెప్తున్నాం. రెస్పాన్స్ ఈజ్ ఇంపార్టెంట్. సరే, అప్పుడప్పుడు కొన్ని నోటి దొరవలో వస్తుంది అనమాట. దాన్ని మీరు హార్ట్కి తీసుకోకండి. గేట్లు ఎత్తాడు ఇవన్నీ వద్దనమాట. రైట్. Disclaimer, kind of disclaimer. So main intention is to make you comfortable, to speak something, please. అంతేగాని ఇన్సల్ట్ ఇవన్నీ కాదనమాట. I'm not saying that I'm a central minister student, you state university, you kind of, no, right. Isina performance jalos, right. So good. As one of our friends, he started, that is Indology. Indology is nothing but, I do accept Indology is nothing but the study of Indian culture and civilization. No doubt about it. Then the question is, to whom we can call an Indologist? Very simple. A foreigner who studies Indian culture. I repeat, a foreigner who studies Indian culture, Indian civilization, we supposed to call him, we supposed to call her Indologist. As I was using the term called German Indologist, Max Muller. V.S. Smith, English Indologist. A.L. Bhashyam, Australian Indologist. We'll be going to refer all these names in subsequent classes. William Jones, we have a number of Indologists. So how we have Indology, apply the same towards Sinology. The study of China. Egyptology, study of Egypt. That's it. So Indology is the one who studies, like a foreigner who studies Indian culture. Now keep aside. It's a good question. So what happened between 1750 BC to 1500 BC? Since we don't have evidences, you call it, just to have an idea. Since we don't have evidences, thereby we don't concentrate between 1750 BC to 1500 BC. And one more thing, years are extremely unimportant. మళ్ళీ ఎందుకు రాస్తున్నావు ఒక ఐడియా ఉండడానికి, just to have an idea what is what kind of. We don't have like exact source to say that by 1750 all towns and cities were destroyed with bulldozers. No. Maximum historians opine that by this time the civilization might have disappeared. In fact, throughout, unfortunately, we use a term called throughout ancient Indian history might have happened. What is this might have? Jarigi undochu kind of. When you don't have exact source, you're supposed to come up with hypotheses. Hypotheses we call them. Based on scanty evidences, developing the theories, please. A little bit evidences, a little bit sources, adding our own ideas to that source, coming up with theory. Hypothesis we call them. Parikalpana antam. Oddule sir, ide baagundi. Hypothesis. And let me tell you, entire prehistoric cultures and Indus Valley civilization, in fact, Vedic civilization runs on hypothesis. When hypothesis plays crucial role whenever we found scanty evidences. ఒక మర్డర్ జరిగింది, one or two evidences, like that too, hypothetical evidences. Now they use, when I say they, police or other department, they use these their own ideas. ఇలా జరిగి ఉండొచ్చు, ఇలా జరిగి ఉండొచ్చు. మర్డర్ చేసినోడు కత్తిని చేతిలో పెట్టుకున్నాడు, దెన్ ఫైన్, నో హైపోథీసిస్. ఏసెండ్రా అని చెప్తాం. ఏం చేస్తారు సార్? మహా అంటే ఐపీసీ ఏదో చెప్తారు, అన్ని చెంచలు కూడా పెట్టి బిర్యానీ పెడతారు అన్నమాట. రైట్, కీపింగ్ aside the biryani, after 7:30 you can think of now Mauryan age, please. As far as Mauryan age, that is 400 BC to 200 BC, please. Fine. So Mauryan age, 400 BC to 200 BC, one of the important chapters of ancient Indian history, that is Mauryan age. Under the tag called Mauryan age, we are going to learn very brief political history, that is Chandragupta Maurya, followed by Bindusara, followed by his son Mauryan Ashoka. Obviously, we are going to spend a little bit time on Mauryan Ashoka. In which circumstances the gentleman captured the territories, that is Battle of Kalinga, right? Or War of Kalinga, which took place in the year 261 BC. After this war, the gentleman professed Buddhism and completely converted to Buddhism, and he was responsible for propagation of Buddhism. Besides Buddhism, he was also responsible for propagation of Dhamma, otherwise called as righteousness, Ashoka's Dhamma. So we're going to spend a little bit time. What is the differences? What are the differences between Mauryan, Ashoka's Dhamma and Buddhism? In what way Mauryan Ashoka, why we were using the term called Mauryan instead of Ashoka? Because we have one more Ashoka, please. We call him Kala Ashoka. So to avoid the confusion, we generally use the term called Mauryan Ashoka. So what were the differences between Buddhism and Mauryan Ashoka's Dhamma. Right? And what way he was responsible for the propagation of both Buddhism and Dhamma. Right? And what was the fate of Mauryan Empire after his death? Right? Besides, we'll be going to talk about administration, extremely important. We're going to spend a lot of time on administration because in India, the administrative skeleton introduced by Mauryans. And whatever administrative institutions introduced by Mauryans, even today we follow them, obviously with minor changes. Central government, provincial government, district government, revenue administration, military administration, judicial administration. Once we're done with administrative institutions, we're going to talk about general conditions, society, economy, and religion. And we're going to concentrate on one of the important components of art and culture, Mauryan art, that is stupas, viharas, Buddhist institutions. How these institutions were influenced by Persian and Greek Greek elements. We call them mixed elements. Right? That will be discussed on the tag called Mauryan Age. 6th chapter, post-Mauryan Age. Post-Mauryan Age. The span of post-Mauryan Age, that is 200 BC to 300 AD, please. 200 BC to 300 AD. So the history of 500 years we are going to learn under the tab called post-Mauryan Age. So as far as post-Mauryan Age, we are going to concentrate two elements. One element political history, second element cultural history. When I say political history, that is post-Mauryan Age, northwestern India, North India, Eastern India, Deccan and South India. As far as northwestern India is concerned, we'll be going to understand factors for the rise of foreign invasions, that is Indo-Greeks, Kushans, Parthians, Pahallavas. When it comes to North India, we have Shungas, Kanvas, very briefly. Followed by Eastern India, Kalinga, Kharavela, followed by Deccan, your Balagaudi dynasty, Shatavahanas. When it comes to South India, we have Cholas of North Tamil Nadu, Pandyas of Southern Tamil Nadu, Cheras of Kerala, Malabar coast. What is what kind of? Now with this background, we are going to enter and we are going to spend a lot of time on cultural history. That is Gandhara School of Art, northwestern India. So why the art which was developed in northwestern India was called as Gandhara? What are the features of Gandhara School of Art? What kind of materials they used? Followed by Mathura School of Art, and finally Amaravati School of Art. I need not to tell you the art form, one of the important components of art and culture. So Gandhara, Mathura and Amaravati. And we are also going to learn how these art forms of post-Mauryan age became the source of inspiration for future arts, future architectural elements. When I say in post-Mauryan age, Gandhara School of Art, northwestern India, Mathura School of Art, North India, Amaravati School of Art, Deccan and South India. In Guptan age and post-Guptan age, Nagara style, North India, Vesara style in Deccan, Dravidian style in South India. The point is, here you should be in a position to interlink with the topics. Please. History is nothing but interlinked. You never come across a new element all of a sudden. If you come across a new institution in particular age, maybe social institution, maybe economic institution, maybe religious institution, maybe cultural institution, it might have the background in previous ages. Right? That one shall concentrate. And one more chapter, that is Guptan Age. Guptan Age. The span of Guptan Age 300 AD to 550 AD. 300 AD into 550 AD. One of the patent questions we generally get from ancient India, Guptans. I'm talking about general studies mains. In what way we are justifying in calling Guptan age as golden age? That's what, when you go through previous question papers, you do come across these kind of questions. In what way we are justifying in calling Guptan age as golden age? We'll be going to discuss. There are two ages in the history of India which can be branded as golden ages according to traditional historians. One among them was the age of Guptas in ancient India, the age of Shah Jahan in medieval India. So what are the parameters based on which these two ages branded as golden ages, and how these parameters were outrightly rejected by modern historians? I'm talking about, according to traditional historians, Guptan age and the age of Shah Jahan can be called as golden age. So in what way the golden age concept was opposed, rejected by modern historians, and what was their view towards Guptan age and Shah Jahan age? So when it comes to Guptans, same political history very briefly, followed by we're going to emphasize over temple architecture. For the first time, Guptans built temples in Nagara style of architecture. So Guptan temples we call them. Obviously one of the important components, literature, Navaratnas we'll be going to discuss, Chandragupta Maurya and all that, Kalidasa, some XYZ Sanskrit scholars. Besides Sanskrit scholars, the gentleman Chandragupta II, otherwise called as Chandragupta Vikramaditya, he also patronized Prakrit scholars. We have Aryabhatta, Varaha Mihira, Brahmagupta, like a group of scholars. And the last chapter, that is post-Guptan age. Post-Guptan age. The last chapter of ancient Indian history. The span of post-Guptan age, 550 AD to 750 AD. 550 AD to 750 AD. Very easiest chapter. Besides political history, that is like Harshavardhana, North India, Pulakeshi II, Deccan, Badami Chalukyans, and Pallavas of Kanchi, South India. We are going to learn further consolidation of, further improvement of temple architecture, Nagara, North India, and a new blend of architecture which we found for the first time in Deccan under the tag called Badami Chalukyas, that is Vesara style of architecture. And it was Pallavans who was responsible, Pallavan rulers were responsible for introducing a new typical style in South India, that is Dravidian style of architecture. This particular architecture was further improved by subsequent rulers of South India, Tanjavur Cholas. So these are the 8 chapters we call it, we are going to discuss under the tag called Ancient Indian History. Now with this background, first chapter, Prehistoric Cultures. Prehistoric Cultures. So when you feel that particular element, particular concept is being not understood, I request everyone, when I say everyone, those who are not getting pleased, you can raise your not voice, a little bit hand, then we'll discuss. So prehistoric cultures. Fine. Now with this background, prehistoric cultures, I repeat again, based on script, history broadly divided into 3 categories: prehistoric, historic, proto-historic, or prehistoric, proto-historic and historic. Prehistoric, no script at all, keep aside. When it comes to proto-historic, script is available, but we are not in a position to understand, thereby proto-historic. When it comes to historic, script is available, we can read it, we can understand it, we can digest it, and we can vomited. So historic age. The best example, Vedic civilization. Now with this background, when we understand prehistoric cultures, now the question is, what does it mean by culture? Including online students. Good. Way of living. Good. Way of life, way of living. Good. Then how about civilization? Advanced way of life. So what is the difference between way of life and advanced way of life? Which one? Acha, civilization means development. Example? Chepnan. Fantastic. Cultures consolidate civilization. Good. Any other? I repeat the question, very simple question. What are the differences between culture and civilization? No doubt, I do accept culture is nothing but way of life. And when it comes to civilization, advanced way of life and further developments. My question is, what are the differences? Fantastic. Culture, non-materialistic in nature. Good. Completely materialistic. Very good. Any other? Any other? Any other? Fine. So culture for our convenience, culture, we have the two elements, that is materialistic and non-materialistic. Someone says, can you use different color? Fine. Materialistic and non-materialistic. So materialistic, that can be counted in progress. Then how about non-materialistic? Non-materialistic related to beliefs, right? Beliefs, traditions. You call religion, you call it non-materialistic. So when I say culture related to when I say civilization related to advanced way of life, advanced materialistic life. If someone asks, can you give an example of culture and civilization? Very simple. In order to move from one place to another place, earlier we used to go on foot. Now we have Ola bike. It's nothing but advanced way of life. Or we have cabs, we have the other mode of transportation. Advanced way of life. Earlier, if you get some sort of disease, right, we used to go for trephination, right? What does it mean, trephination? Trephination. Especially might have found in villages, please. Trephination. It's an yes. So trephination, it's an old method of curing diseases, please. Especially ఊళ్ళలో అన్నమాట. అంటే ఏం చేస్తారు సార్? ఏం చేయరు, కాలుస్తారు అన్నమాట. అదైతే మాకు తెలుసులేదు సార్. Taking an iron rod, making some sort of herbs, right? Trephination we call it. We'll be going to discuss as part of Neolithic cultures. Trephination. Now we have Yashoda Hospital, please. Not only Yashoda, we have many other hospitals. My point is, culture, way of life, civilization, advanced way of life. In fact, we are not going to discuss civilization now because our target is cultures. So we are going to learn what kind of way of life of these people. Paleolithic people, way of life of Paleolithic, way of life of Mesolithic, Neolithic, Chalcolithic and Megalithic. Obviously, we are not going to discuss Megalithic here. As part of South Indian history, we are going to discuss megalithic cultures, because the absence of megalithic cultures in Northwest, West, North India and Eastern India. We found megalithic cultures only in South India, Deccan and South India. So Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Paleo, Meso, Neo, Chalco. Now if someone asks, What was the criteria based on which these cultures have classified? Based on, obviously, not chronology, try to understand, not chronology, but tool making technology. Tool making technology. So we'll be going to get the images of the respective tools. How Mesolithic tools differ with Paleolithic tools. How Neolithic tools differ with Mesolithic. Obviously, Chalcolithic differ with Neolithic. So based on tool making technology, prehistoric cultures got classified. The very title itself indicates this. Paleolithic, Old Stone Age. Mesolithic, Middle Stone Age. Neolithic, New Stone Age. Chalco, it's an Copper Stone Age. Obviously, when we observe in subsequent slides, you shall in a position to understand how tools were made of in Paleolithic cultures. So tools, when we observe in Paleolithic cultures, they were very rude in nature, very primitive. భయంకరంగా ఆకలేస్తుంది, స్విగ్గీ చేయలేం, నెట్వర్క్ లేదు, అక్కడ నుంచి ఏదో ఒకటి పోతుంది, ఏదో బండరాయో కొండరాయో ఏదో ఫస్ట్ కొట్టి తిన. రూడ్ మెటీరియల్, దీంతో కొడితే సస్తదా, అవన్నీ లేవన్నమాట. ఫస్ట్ అయితే కొట్టురు. నెసెసిటీ ఇస్ ద మదర్ ఆఫ్ ఇన్వెన్షన్. Very primitive, very rude. So by the time Mesolithic, we found a little bit slight, sharp tools. We call it Mesolithic tools, otherwise called as microliths. Why we call them microliths? Because they were very small in nature. Small in size, sharp in nature. And it is not to exaggerate to say, when we observe, when we measure, the Mesolithic tools went for 1 centimeter to 8 centimeters. Just imagine, right? Very sharp place. The credit goes to technological developments. Obviously, when I say technological developments, it had taken lakhs and lakhs of years. Lakhs and lakhs of years to join with Mesolithic, from Mesolithic to Neolithic, from Neolithic to Chalcolithic, it went on. So here, I repeat, based on tool making technology, prehistoric cultures were classified, not on the basis of chronology. Now with this background, when you observe Paleolithic cultures, you come across some span, say from earliest to 10,000 BC. Mesolithic cultures from 10,000 BC to 5,000 BC. Just I'm giving an example. When it comes to Neolithic cultures, 7,000 BC to 7,000 BC to 4,000 BC. Earliest to 10,000 BC, 10,000 BC to 5,000 BC. According to chronology, from 5,000 BC to some 4,000 or 3,000 or 2,000. But when it comes to Neolithic cultures, 7,000 BC to 4,000 BC. Chalcolithic from 5,000 BC to 2,500 BC. And many Chalcolithic cultures were contemporary to Indus Valley Civilization. So the moment you come across some XYZ spans I'm talking about, don't get confused, because these cultures were not classified on the basis of chronology, but on the basis of tool making technology. With this background, have subheading that is Paleolithic cultures. And meanwhile, just go through the slide, please. Slide lo ఏముంటే దాన్ని ఎక్కించుకోవడానికి ప్రయత్నించొద్దు, అన్ఇంపార్టెంట్. మళ్ళీ ఎందుకు పెట్టినా ఒక ఐడియా ఉండడానికి. Fine. Pranay also says culture is set of ideals, beliefs. చాలా పెద్ద డెఫినేషన్ ఇచ్చాడు. Good. So in simple, if someone asks the culture, culture is nothing but way of life. The way you talk, the way you walk, the way you eat. దొరికింది కదా అని మొత్తం మండి మెల్లగా తినాలన్నమాట. ఏదో సునామీలో మొత్తం పోయినట్టు ఇటు తినొద్దు, మెల్లగా తినాలన్నమాట. ఆకలి వేస్తుంది సార్, ఏం చేయాలి? ఆకలి వేసినా మెల్లమెల్ల తినాలన్నమాట. సో ఇట్స్ ఎ కల్చర్. ఆల్రెడీ ఫుల్ బాటిల్ ఇది మొత్తం తాగుతుంది, మెల్లగా మెల్లగా దాంట్లో వేసుకొని తాగాలన్నమాట. లేకపోతే ఏమవుతుంది సార్, ఎవరికి తోచినది వాడు చెప్తాడనమాట. ఎప్పుడు మంది ముఖం చూడలేదు, వాడి చెప్తాడు అనమాట. సో కల్చర్స్ అండ్ వే ఆఫ్ లైఫ్. So when you observe, like, when you're talking to friends and all, we generally say, you cultureless fellow. We generally say, not you people, we generally say it. So what does it mean? Which means you don't know how to behave, kind of. When I say cultureless fellows, and you don't know how to live, how to, like, follow some rules and regulations, kind of. Right. So culture, way of life, civilization, advanced way of life. So with this background, Paleolithic cultures. So on the track called Prehistoric Culture, first chapter, start with Paleolithic cultures. So one of the sources through which we can understand the way of life of prehistoric people, we have paintings that will be discussed just to have an idea. So what were the sources? Because in order to understand past, you require sources, you require evidences. And these sources, when I say prehistoric cultures, as I was telling, we were forced to depend on archaeology, archaeological excavations and all that. It was Department of Archaeology which had done commendable works in discovering and preserving the so-called paintings. So we call them prehistoric paintings. When we observe paintings, by observing, by looking at the paintings, we can easily assume what kind of social life, what kind of economic life, what kind of, say, beliefs the prehistoric people might have undergone. Say for example, bow and arrow. The moment you come across the paint called bow and arrow, which indicates economic subsistence, livelihood I'm talking about. Bow and arrow is nothing but hunting and gathering, that's it. అంతేగాని రాముడు సీత ఇది కాదనమాట, వీటిని తగ్గించుకోమని చెప్పేది. అదేంటి సార్, ఆయన కూడా బౌ అండ్ యారో, అది వేరేది యారో అనమాట. సో బౌ అండ్ యారో, హంటింగ్ అండ్ గ్యాదరింగ్ ప్లేస్. అండ్ సమ్, the people gathering at one place performing some sort of dances, community dancing we call them. And even today the tribals do follow community dancing. అదేంటి సార్, బతుకమ్మ కూడా కదా, కైండ్ ఆఫ్, రైట్, community dancing we have. So my point is, in order to understand the way of life of prehistoric cultures, the best examples are paintings. ఏమైనా కనిపిస్తుందా? ఏదో మసక కనిపిస్తుంది సార్, ఇక్కడ ఏదో కనిపిస్తున్నట్టుంది. వాట్ ఈస్ దిస్? లైక్ సల్మాన్ ఖాన్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్. ఇప్పుడు ఆయన ఎందుకు లావుతోలేదు సార్, నోటి దూల. ఏ ముహూర్తంలో ఆయన హంటింగ్ మేడో పోతలే ఉన్నాడు అనమాట. సో Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic and Chalcolithic. Chalcolithic, otherwise called as the age of metals. Metal, copper. So now the previous questions, the question asked in this way, arrange them into chronological order, the use of metals. You can have, in a little bit bracket, that is copper. So copper was used in and around 5000 BC. The first metal to be used in Indian subcontinent, copper, please. So we call them chalco, copper, lithic stone. So copper was used by Chalcolithic people, obviously, in and around 5000 BC. Followed by, can anyone? Copper followed by Bronze, good. Bronze. In and around 2500 BC, please. Bronze, in and around 2500 BC. So when I say copper was used by Chalcolithic people, then how about bronze? Can anyone? Indus Valley people, good. Indus Valley people, please. So bronze was used for the first time by the people of Indus Valley civilization. Can anyone? Bronze is an alloy metal of copper and tin. Good. Copper and tin. It's a mixed metal, alloyed metal we call it. Copper and tin. So copper 5000 BC, bronze 2500 BC, followed by iron in and around 1000 BC. Iron in and around 1000 BC, especially Gangetic Aryans you call them, or later Vedic Aryans. We'll be going to discuss in subsequent classes. So iron was used for the first time by later Vedic Aryans or Gangetic Aryans. So it was like, the use of metals in India, please. So by looking at a little bit images, you can easily understand the way of life or the culture, the cultural aspects of the respective people, Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic and Chalcolithic. So in subsequent slides, you shall understand one of the characteristic features of Paleolithic cultures, invention of fire. Like modern barbecue, please. How many of non-vegetarians? Then how about vegetarians? Right. No, when I say barbecue, another else anamata. So one of the cultural elements which we carry even today, please. వాళ్ళు ఒక జంతువుని చంపి తినమన్నట్టు. మనం ఏం చేస్తున్నాం? మనం కూడా ఎట్ట పెట్టుకుని తింటున్నాం. With very like very posh words like absolute barbecue kind of పెద్ద పదాలు యూజ్ చేస్తాం. Whatever. Then followed by the second the image Mesolithic. Right? Be it in Paleo, Meso, Neo and Chalco, even today, be it like in culture and be it civilization, when we observe the man or men, only man ante manaku patyaparam vastunnadu. Sar is a brand ambassador of patriarchal society. He uses only man. He never uses women. Idoka patyaparam. So men, sallabadutannadu. Especially we have feminist please. All over sir. వాళ్ళు కూడా మనలాంటి మనుషులు అనమాట. So we want 33% reservation. We want equal opportunities. Right? Everything equal opportunities అని చెప్తారు. So because of feminist, the economy of Delhi reaching to the celestial heights. అంటే ఏం చేస్తున్నారు సార్? వాళ్ళు ఎకానమీకి తోడ్పడుతున్నారు అని చెప్తున్నారు అనమాట. మాకు తెలుసులేదు సార్ ఎట్లా తోడ్పడుతున్నారు. రైట్. So my point is when you observe man, alvat అయిపోయింది నోర్దుల kind of. So man, as one gentleman says, Aristotle, man is a social animal. అంటే ఒక్కడు ఉండలేడు అనమాట. భయం ఎవడ నుంచి పళ్ళని మిగతా ఎవరు భయం ఒకడు. గుంపులు అనమాట. Social animal. The most weakest animal in animal kingdom, once again man. ఇది ఎవరు చెప్పాడు సార్? ఆయనే చెప్పాడు. సోషల్ యానిమల్ అని చెప్పాడు. మ్యాన్ ఈజ్ ఎ సోషల్ యానిమల్, అరిస్టాటిల్. అండ్ హీ ఫర్దర్ సేస్ ద మోస్ట్ వీకెస్ట్ యానిమల్. దట్ ఈస్ ద రీజన్ he, when I say he, including she please. When I say he, you must understand she. For example, Lord Shiva, feminist నోరు మూయించడానికి ఆయన సగ భాగాన్ని ఇచ్చేసాడు అనమాట. దట్ ఈస్ ద రీజన్ వి కాల్ హిమ్ అర్ధ నారీశ్వర. ఎప్పుడు చూసిన గోల తీసుకొని చెప్పాడు. అది అట్ట ఉండని చెప్పింది ఆయన. అర్ధనారీశ్వరుడు. అప్పటి నుంచే ఫెమినిస్టులు అన్నమాట. రైట్. సో We have like, so bands, like, people lived on bands. అందుకని బార్లో ఒక్కరు కూర్చొని తాగాడు సార్, కరెక్ట్. Right. As far as prehistoric cultures, especially Paleolithic cultures are concerned, right? Paleolithic cultures are concerned. Just like, on one hand, you can observe the things, how these images, like, indicate the various cultural aspects of the respective people. So when we observe this particular, like, pig, బతకాలంటే చంపాలన్నమాట. Very cruel statement. If you want to exist, if you want to survive, you must kill others for food, for any other, like, purposes. Fine. Keeping aside this stuff, another cute little boys, right? మన పూర్వీకులు వెళ్ళంతారు. మా పేరెంట్స్ ఫోటో నాకు సరిగ్గా తెలియదు సార్, వీళ్ళెవరు నాకు తెలియదు. సో ఈ డిగ్రీ కాలేజీలో బొమ్మ ఇస్తే డిగ్రీ కాలేజ్ స్టూడెంట్స్ చాలా ఎంతూజియాస్టిక్ ఉంటుంది. వాళ్ళు ఏమన్నా జిమ్ చేస్తున్నారా సార్, ఇట్టుంటుంది అనమాట. ఎక్కడికో తీసుకెళ్ళాలని ప్రయత్నిస్తారు, రారు పక్కన నన్ను కూడా లాగుతారు, ఏడు పోతే కూర్చోని చెప్తారు. రైట్, జిమ్ చేస్తున్నారా అది ఇదని చెప్తారు. So now the previous questions, the tools of Paleolithic cultures were made of a typical stone called quartzite. Quartzite, please. So the name of the stone. Obviously, ఒక చిలిపి ప్రశ్న అడగొచ్చు అనమాట. Quartzite కి how we can differentiate? Obviously, మనకు అన్నీ కూడా రాళ్ళు మాదిరి కనిపిస్తుంది. When it comes to archaeologists, obviously they have the knowledge of differentiating the stones, please. I repeat. The tools of Paleolithic cultures were made of a typical stone called quartzite, please. I need to tell you, the tools in Paleolithic cultures were in very rude, please. Bandaralu, Gundralu kind of it. The moment you come across the tools which were smaller in size and sharp in nature, right? Obviously, these tools belonged to Mesolithic, Meso, otherwise called as microlithic. And further, when I say further, Paleo, Meso, Neo, further tools, bone tools we call them, right? To understand it? Bone tools. Paleolithic stone tools, Mesolithic, no doubt, tools in smaller in size, sharper in nature. When it comes to Neolithic, no doubt stones, besides stones, they also used bones. The tools made of bones. Obviously, like, from wild animals, which indicates further technological advancement. As I was telling, these cultures were classified not on the basis of chronology, but on the basis of tool making technology. So these are the example of Paleolithic and Mesolithic tools, please. And even besides Mesolithic tools, we have even Neolithic tools, please. అంటే మనకు లెబరీస్ స్విగ్గీ చేసుకోవాలంటే ఫోన్ తీయాలి, యాప్ తీయాలి, చాలా ప్రాసెస్ ఉంటుంది అనమాట. ఆబ్వియస్లీ every element has its own process. Right, now with this background, when we understand the actual, like, the stuff of Paleolithic cultures, in Paleolithic cultures we found division of labor. I need now to tell you, even today we follow the same tradition, division of labor. So what does it mean by division of labor? That division of labor, men were associated with hunting, whereas women were associated with gathering. That's it. Division of labor right from the days of Paleolithic cultures. In fact, of late, when I say of late, in 21st century and even 20th century onwards, even women also started making competition with men. That is another story. Right? When it comes to clear-cut division of labor, so now the previous questions we found in cultural ages or prehistoric cultures. Besides, development of simple tools, another important aspect of Paleolithic cultures. Simple tools. When I say simple tools, use a term called primitive and rude. The Paleolithic tools were very primitive in nature and very rude in nature. For simple tools we call them. As far as spirituality is concerned, it's too early to make a comment on spirituality. When I say spirituality, some sort of religious beliefs we call them. It's in human psychology. Out of fear, man, in bracket men, right? Out of fear, man started worshipping natural elements. Try to understand. So group of men, group of people, as we referred, there is people lived on bands, groups, right? And these groups over a period of time emerged as communities, clans, and classes, castes. It went on, races. It went on, right? So group of people who are moving in a thick jungle, all of a sudden the thunders have come, the thunderstorms have come. So people started fearing, getting fear, and started worshipping some sort of natural forces. I'm talking about 5 natural elements. Over a period of time, we found in Sanskrit texts or in Vedic literature, Pancha Bhutas. 5 natural elements. Water, fire, air, whatnot, please. And it's in human psychology. If you start going to the temple, to the church, to the mosque, which means you have some sort of fear, please. And especially, let us apply this particular element for aspirants, for students, please. రేపు ఎగ్జామ్ ఉంది, ఈరోజు తలస్నానం చేసి టెంపుల్కి వెళ్తాం. నీ చేతిలో పెడుతున్నాను, నీ ఇష్టం అని చెప్తాను. పెన్ను కూడా ఆయన దగ్గర పెడుతున్నాడు. పెన్ను ఇంకా ఇవన్నీ ఎగ్జామ్ పేపర్, ప్యాడ్ ఇవన్నీ ఉంటాయి కదా. ఎస్పెషలీ గణేష్ టెంపుల్కి వెళ్తాం, ఎందుకంటే విఘ్నాలను తొలగిస్తాడండి. మళ్ళీ ఫెయిల్ అయితే అది సెకండ్ క్వశ్చన్. అది అంటే మనలో ఉన్న ఇది భయం ఏదైతే ఉందో, ఆ భయం దట్ ఫియర్ ఫోర్సెస్ అస్ టు గో సమ్వేర్ ఎల్స్. This is how we need to understand the so-called stuff. So the fear was used by some XYZ people as their business. And they, what we call, formulated the stuff, institutions. And they wrote their own way of rules and regulations. And they imposed on people. So that will be discussed, just watching. And one more thing, that is the Paleolithic, not only Paleolithic, in fact, Paleolithic including Mesolithic, we found, you call them nomads, you call them. Nomad bandits, that is moving from one place to another place. When it comes to Mesolithic age and Neolithic age, the nomadic nature came to an end. Reason being, we found village settlements. When I say we found village settlements, we found settled life. So what does it mean by settled life? What factor forced Mesolithic people and Neolithic people to settle at one place? Paleolithic people whose economic subsistence happened to be hunting and gathering. Obviously, you need to move from one place to another place in order to hunt animals, in order to gather edible oils and all, right? Then how about Mesolithic economy, Mesolithic economic subsistence? That is, they domesticated animals. Domestication of animals. Domestication of animals, otherwise called as pastoral economy. Some sort of not exactly pastoral economy, it's a beginning, primitive pastoral economy. I'm talking about in Mesolithic. Then how about Neolithic? We found crops, agriculture. So pastoral economy or domestication of animals and cultivation of primitive crops forced the people to settle at one place. And apply the same towards Chalcolithic people. I repeat, the fundamental difference between Paleolithic, Meso, Neo and Chalcolithic. Paleolithic people were nomads. From the days of Mesolithic onwards, we found settled life. So these are the the abodes of our settlements of Paleolithic cultures. Settlements. So Paleolithic people lived on caves, right? Near water bodies, right? What for? To hunt the animals near water bodies. Because animals do come for drinking water, so you can easily attack on them. Near water bodies, near caves and all. So this is unimportant for us, just have an idea, right? And this is important for us, right? So the maximum prehistoric paintings, especially from the days of Mesolithic age, which we found in Bhimbetka caves, please. So Bhimbetka rock shelters or Bhimbetka caves we call it, which comes in Hoshangabad district of Madhya Pradesh, please. Hoshangabad district of Madhya Pradesh. Bhimbetka caves or Bhimbetka rock-cut caves we call them. Even in Andhra Pradesh, we have so many caves. For example, we have Ketavaram caves in Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh, Burra caves, Vishakhapatnam. Even in Kurnool we have so many caves placed, especially near Banaganapalle placed. And anyone from Kurnool district? What is the name of the caves? The largest caves in Asia? Belum caves placed. Belum caves we call them. The largest caves in Asia. And one of the important settlements of Paleolithic, Mesolithic and other people. Now with this background have one or two facts related to important sites we call it. So when you go through previous question papers, we generally get questions odd one out, please. When I say odd one out, three important sites, not all sites, very prominent sites you call them, three important sites from one culture, Paleolithic, another from different culture, or Meso, Neo, Chalco kind of, vice versa. So when you observe the important sites of whether Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic and all, maximum sites are located on the banks of rivers, river valleys you call them. Very simple logic as we discussed, caves, river valleys and all. So animals when they come for drinking water, you can easily attack them. So the important sites of Paleolithic cultures, we have Son Valley, Pakistan. Son Valley, Pakistan. How we have Godavari Valley, Krishna Valley kind of. Son Valley, Pakistan. Narmada Valley, Madhya Pradesh. Narmada Valley, Madhya Pradesh. Belan Valley, UP, Uttar Pradesh. These are the rivers placed. Belan Valley. Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir. Today we call it Kashmir. Pahalgam. Bhimbetka, as we referred, that is Madhya Pradesh, Bhimbetka, rock cave shelters. Nagarjuna Konda, in fact, 50% Konda belonged to Andhra Pradesh, remaining Konda belonged to Telangana state. That is 50% went to Andhra Pradesh, that is Guntur district you call it, and the remaining Konda, that is Nalgonda district of Telangana state. This is Nagarjuna Konda place. The significance of Nagarjuna Konda, you can call it as a multi-cultured site. In fact, multi-cultured sites to be concentrated. Please. Multi-cultured site. So if someone asks a question, what does it mean by multi-cultural site? The best example, like Nagarjuna Konda. When I say Nagarjuna Konda is a multicultural site, Nagarjuna Konda, it's a site of Paleo, Meso, Neo, and even Chalco. Forget about Chalco, even even Megalithic, which is a settlement of various cultures. So we call it multi-culture site. Even Bhimbetka was also multicultural site. Bhimbetka, Madhya Pradesh, multicultural site. We found the paintings of Mesolithic cultures, paintings of Neolithic cultures, paintings of Chalcolithic cultures. Multicultural site. And besides Nagarjuna Konda, we have Hangsi, otherwise called as Hunasgi, Karnataka. Hangsi, Hungsi, otherwise called as Hunasgi kind of. Like Kalaburgi, Gulbarga kind of. Karnataka. And finally, Atrimpakkam. In Tittatlil, sir, it's the name of the site in Tamil Nadu. Atrimpakkam. And finally, another multicultural site happened to be one of the previous questions. Muchala Chintamanu Gavi, please. Gavi, Telugu term, cave, English version. Gavi. Gufa kind of. In Hindi we call it Gufa. For example, we'll be going to discuss in subsequent classes Ganesh Gufa, Hathi Gumfa cave inscription kind of. Muchala Chintamanu Gavi, which comes in Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh. So now the previous questions, as I was telling, the significance of Muchala Chintamanu Gavi, the first bone tools were discovered. The first bone tools were discovered here. Bone tools. So the tools made up of bones. The first bone tools were discovered. Muchala Chintamanu Gavi or Muchatla Chintamanu Gavi. In some XYZ text you also come across. Until అందరూ కలిసి ముచ్చట్లు పెట్టుకునేవాళ్ళు. ముచ్చల చింతమాను గవి. So just have an idea, it's an Mesolithic age, otherwise called as Intermediate Stone Age. When I say Mesolithic, it's a kind of bridge between Paleolithic and Neolithic. Transition you call it. So as far as Mesolithic age is concerned, we found the tools were smaller in size and sharp in nature. Smaller in size, sharp in nature. Since tools were smaller in size, nothing is wrong in calling them as microliths. Microliths. In some texts you also come across, in fact, as a previous question, they were also called as pygmy tools. Pygmy tools. I repeat, Mesolithic tools, otherwise called as microliths, reason being they were very smaller in size, which ranges 1 centimeters to 8 centimeters, and they were also called as pygmy tools. Another important aspect of Mesolithic cultures, when we understand the differences between the sites of Paleolithic cultures and the sites of Mesolithic cultures. As we referred, one or two important sites of Paleolithic cultures, maximum sites of Paleolithic cultures were located on the banks of rivers. Then how about sites of Mesolithic cultures onwards? We found away from river valleys, away from river banks. Reason being, the people of Mesolithic cultures have learned an art called, 10 minutes an art called art of making pottery. This is one of the signs. Right? So 12:30 అయింటుంది మధ్యాహ్నం, మెల్లగా ఒక ప్లేట్ పడేస్తాడు. సారీ సార్ చూసుకోలేదు అంటే ఇజ్జత్గా నడు వెళ్దాం, లంచ్ టైం అవుతుంది కైండ్ ఆఫ్. ఈవినింగ్ 5 బాటిల్ పడేస్తాడు, చూసుకోలేదు సార్. 5కి స్నాక్స్ పెడతారు, ఆకలి వేస్తుంది. దీస్ ఆర్ ది సైన్స్. ఐ కెన్ అండర్స్టాండ్. ఫైన్, వెళ్దాం. So art of making pottery, please. Jars you call them, pots you call them. What for? To store water. Simple, right? To store water. So this particular art forced the people of Mesolithic cultures onwards, they started living away from river banks. That's what you shall observe the sites of Mesolithic cultures based. ఆర్టిస్ట్స్ అంటే ప్రతి ఒక్కరిలో ఒక ఆర్టిస్ట్ ఉంటారు అన్నమాట. ఎవడి పర్సెప్షన్ ఆడది, ఎవడి పర్ఫార్మెన్స్ ఆడది. కానీ ఏ ప్యాంటే, జీన్స్ ప్యాంటా, లెనిన్ కాటన్ జీన్సా, టాన్ జీన్స్. కానీ right, so important sites of Mesolithic cultures. Right? Important sites of Mesolithic cultures. That is Bagor, Rajasthan. The significance of Bagor, the evidence of domestication of animals we found. The evidences, when is evidences, archaeological excavations, evidences of domestication of animals. Bagor, Rajasthan. I'm just giving an example. As I was telling on the previous slide, the sites of Paleolithic cultures found nearby water bodies, right? Or valleys, river banks and all that. When it comes to the sites of Mesolithic cultures, the best example Bagor, just one example, Bagor, it's one of the sites, one of the prominent sites. We have at least hundreds and hundreds of sites of each and every culture. We're not here to discuss all this stuff, only important sites. When it comes to Bagor site located on the bank, not on the banks of river, for about 40 kilometers from the banks of river, please. They have learned some sort of art of making pottery, art of making lithics or small tools you call them. So all these elements force them to live out of banks. One more, Sarai Nehrai, Belan Valley, please. Sarai Nehrai, Belan Valley. Belan Valley, UP, Bolan Valley, Pakistan, please. Now Belan Valley, UP, Uttar Pradesh. When it comes to, we have one more, Bolan Valley, that is in northwestern India. At present we call them Pakistan. So Sarai Nahrai, Belan Valley. One more, Chopani Mando, once again Belan Valley, please. Chopani Mando. So under the tag called Chopani, under the site called Chopani Mando, you can write down significance of Chopani Mando. Handmade potteries were discovered. చేతితో తయారు చేసిన కుండలు, వి కాల్ ఇట్ ఇన్ తెలుగు. హ్యాండ్ మేడ్ పాటరీ, హ్యాండ్మేడ్ పాటరీ డిస్కవర్డ్. One more, Sanganakallu, please. Ballari district of Karnataka state. Sanganakallu, right? Followed by Renigunta, Andhra Pradesh, Chittoor district. And finally, Bhimbetka, as I was telling, multi-cultured site. Besides Bhimbetka, we have Adamghar, Madhya Pradesh, please. Adamghar caves, right? Adamghar, Bhimbetka caves, Adamghar caves, Madhya Pradesh. Right? Obviously, not in India. So, Bagor, Sarai Naharai, Chopani Mando, Sanganakallu, Renigunta, Bhimbetka, and Adamghar. So, unimportant for us, just like have an idea what kind of village settlements which we found during Mesolithic ages, please. Village settlement. We call them thatched houses, please. Very primitive houses. So, as far as Neolithic is concerned, shall we continue? Right. Mari anta amayakanga bettakandi. So, as far as Neolithic cultures are concerned, we'll have a pause. We'll continue the next class, please.